Hello everybody, this is Peter the Asian. Today I'll be bringing you a knife sharpening video as requested by one of my friends. So let's start off by introducing the knives I'll be sharpening and the stones I'll be using. This is a 14-inch right-handed Yamagiba and it's made out of blue steel, I believe. Some shitty chef's knife, some shitty santoku knife, a paring knife. And then now we move on to the stones. This is a 400 grit, 1000 grit combination stone. It's a decent quality, not bad. Comes with this rubber anti-slipping mount here, so I'll just put that on. Next, I have this. I believe this is either 80 grit or 120 grit ceramic stone. And this is a 5000 grit ceramic stone. So I'll just start off with telling you what I'm gonna do. So this will just go through polishing through the ceramic stone, and the rest of the three knives will go through the process of the very coarse grit to the medium grit to the fine grit. So let's get started. First thing I like to do is you want to soak the stones into water for about 20 or so minutes. And then next, just splash them with a little bit of water. And I like to rub the stones with the one grit that's above it. So if I'm using the medium grit, I'll rub the fine grit up to it. So I'm going to start off with actually the medium grit, about the 1000 grit side. So I'll rub it with the 5000 grit with a little bit of water. So this process not only flattens the stone a little bit, it also creates a really decent slurry that you could start working off, which is really nice compared to creating a slurry from your knife in the start. So now what we want to do here is we line the stone up perpendicular against the counter, clear our surface. I like to start on the outside edge first because I'm right-handed. So we angle the knife down about, I say 20 to 25 degrees. Really depends on your style of cooking. I know that for European knives, you actually use about a 45 degrees, and that's where you get that honing rod angle from. But since we won't be using the honing rod, I'll just be going with the 20 to 25 degrees angle. And the knife should also go on an angle itself, about 45 degrees. And what you want to do is apply pressure down the point of contact, and then slowly move up and down, and then proceed to the next section and the next section. And you want to try to maintain a uniform movement. That way, I'll make sure that you'll get a nice edge. So that should be fairly decent. Now I'll move on to the other side. Same procedure. I switch hands. There's different ways to do this, but I like to switch hands. Make sure that you try to use the entire stone. Therefore, if you have, say, a big dent in it, it'll be very uniform, so you can clean it out with a coarser grit stone a lot easier than, say, if you just work right in the middle. Now flip back to the side. Now repeat this process about 2 times on each side. Then wash it off, and then we could check to see if it needs either more work or we can move on. So to me, this looks fairly decent. So I'm just gonna put this aside and then move on to the chef's knife. Same thing here. It's a little dry. We'll add some water, grind it off a little. Now, you should get into the habit of grinding stones after each use. Keep them really flat, and makes your sharpening job a lot easier. Same way, in the chef's knife, actually, we start off somewhat flat, and as we move to the tip, we turn the knife up. because the Santoku knife actually has a somewhat flat edge and the chef's knife tips up a little, so you need to follow that geometry. So now we're just tipping it up, sharpening the tip, switching sides. Some chef's knives are really annoying with the back, with like that big bump. So just try not to sharpen there too much, or else you hear that grinding sound. Now we switch back to this side. A good way to judge whether or not if you're sharpening this correctly is you can listen to the sound, right? So if the sound sounds fairly uniform all the way across the blade, then you know you have a consistent angle across it. Now wash that off. Now a good way to tell if you're doing the medium grit correctly is that you could kind of, maybe you could tell the edges, the shine is actually about even on both sides, and that when you drag your finger across it, it should feel very grippy, but there's no blurs or burrs or anything like that on the side, so it's a nice, almost clean edge. Same thing goes for the little knife. I'm not gonna go into too much detail about it, but since you know, I like to flip the stones around sometimes, so you start on the edge. And depending on the material, you might apply a little bit more force and a little bit less, but you should use the proper stones such that you're not pushing down a lot. You should let the stone do the work. So assuming this is done, so we're going to put this aside. And we dig out the 5000 grit stone. Now this creates a slurry really easily, so we don't need to grind it with anything. So we just clean off the counter here. With this stone, you should hear almost like a smooth glass sound to it. So let's start that. Same thing, same procedure as before, but now we're just really looking for, you know, a really nice shine on the edge. Make sure that, you know, it's very nice. So we'll start off from the tip. You should have that uniform sound. And you could go in circular motions too, like this is a polishing finish, or technique rather, so it doesn't really matter too much whichever way you goes, but you just have to make sure that your angle is consistent with what you did from before. And then to judge whether or not your polishing stage has been done, just feel the edges. Like if it doesn't feel grippy, then you know you have a really straight edge. And because of this angle, you would polish your knife a lot more using the 5000 grit stone compared to, say, honing it, because I've done that before. It does kind of wreck your edges. So this feels somewhat decent to me right now, so I'm just gonna put this down and that's done. Same thing to the chef's knife. All you're kind of hearing for is the micro steels getting polished off, and that your edge actually just have a really clean shine to it. It's kind of hard to keep your angle correctly, but just make sure that your hand, the hand that's gripping your knife, is gripped firmly, and that you try to maintain the correct angle to it.